welcome to The Next Word. I'm your host, Chris Warnke, and tonight we're going to talk about crowdfunding. It's really no secret that for raising monies from banks and venture capitalists, especially for small businesses, women and minorities, is very, very hard. But tonight we're going to find out how you can do it with William Michael Cunningham, who is a managing partner of Crowdfunding National Services, as well as author of the Jobs Act, and an economist by training. Bill, what a mouthful. And I know you have an incredible resume.
Thank you, Christine.
But thank you, because I love this issue. And if you were reading the Washington Post today, you talked about, there's an article about crowdfunding for Ebola.
That's right, that's right. What we're finding is that people are using this technique to raise money for causes and for issues that they care deeply about very, very quickly. That's one of the great things about crowdfunding, which is, by the way, open source financing, basically going out to a crowd, a community of people, raising money for a person, a project, or a product very, very quickly. So you're absolutely right. People are raising money for Ebola research in light of the Dallas incident. So it's just fantastic.
So they're raising money. So you need a crowd to do crowdfunding.
That's correct.
That's one of your first steps, of course. So people are going to say, okay, Bill, how do you create this crowd? Is it something you have to create from scratch? Can you use another platform?
Yes.
What do you tell people?
Well, what I tell people is that you have a crowd. It may not be big enough to raise $1 million, but you have a crowd. You might be able to raise $1,000. You might be able to raise $5,000 from your crowd. So you have to think strategically about who you know and the networks that you're involved in. School, church, community in general. And you have to think about the people within those communities that would be interested in what you're doing.
Or care about what
you're doing. To the extent that they would be willing to part with money or part with time. I mean, because not all of crowdfunding is about money. Some of it is about gathering support for a new idea, a new product, a new service. So you have to think strategic. You have to use your Twitter handle, your Twitter followers, Facebook, of course, LinkedIn, but also the physical communities that you belong to offline. And you have to look at, again, people in those communities that care about the issue that you're, or the issue, the product, or the person that you are crowdfunding for.
So like here we are in Montgomery County, the heart of NIH. Ebola research could be extremely appealing.
Yes, yes, yes. I agree. I mean, you've got a community here that's knowledgeable, number one. Number two, they have the occupational interest in the subject matter. And number three, they've got the assets, the skill to do something about it. So you certainly could try to energize crowdfunding around various, and we've seen this work in a number of cases, around various health care issues. One of the things that we're looking at, I'm from Washington, D.C., born and raised, Ward 7.
Me too.
Yep. So
born and raised, well, not born and raised. Born, but not raised, but now back.
So we're looking at energizing the Ward 7 and Ward 8 communities around healthcare issues in Ward 7 and Ward 8. So the idea is, it's much needed, and this is a tool that allows you to do that.
Now, I gave a speech the other day, and I said, in fact, some of the highest rates of breast cancer are in Ward 7 and 8 of the District of Columbia. Some of the highest rates of domestic violence are in Ward 7 and 8. In the District of Columbia. So and homeless population.
Right. You can use crowdfunding to address each and every one of those issues. The thing to think about, though, is that you're probably not going to come out and raise $1 million. A lot of people think, hey, if I do crowdfunding, and by the way you do crowdfunding is we recommend going to certain websites, Indiegogo, Kickstarter, Start Some Good, GoFundMe. There are about 50 or 60 platforms that have popped up to basically allow people the opportunity to post an idea, a product, or a person, funding for a person online, and then energize a community to make donations.
So if you go to Kickstarter, which of course, was that founded by Ted Leonsis?
No. I think he was probably one of the early investors. Don't quote
Investors.
me on that. Of course, I'm on
Yes.
TV, so I am being
Yes.
quoted on that. But I think he was one of the
Okay,
early
okay. That's what I
earlier
thought.
investors.
He was an early investor in that. What a brilliant idea.
But it's
Kickstarter.
a great idea. Now,
That's great.
Kickstarter focuses, and they'll object to this, but according to our research, Kickstarter focuses mainly on products. That was one of the things that I mentioned in the book, is separating out what the various crowdfunding platforms focus on. Indiegogo focuses on softer, artistic types of endeavors. There are other crowdfunding platforms, Start Some Good, which focuses on social projects. We recently ran a crowdfunding campaign on Start Some Good for a domestic violence shelter in Prince George's County. And there are others like GoFundMe, which focus on personal crowdfunding. Hey, I need to raise $10,000 for some medical expenses, or I need to raise $5,000 for my car, that sort of thing.
Right.
GoFundMe focuses on the individual, the person. So there are various categories of crowdfunding platforms, websites that you need to be aware of as you approach the sector.
Now, are certain jurisdictions, though, you're allowed to use this? For instance, the state of Maryland is one of those. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because there are certain states that have not passed the adequate laws to
there are. And what we're talking about is the difference between donations-based crowdfunding and equity crowdfunding. Indiegogo, Kickstarter, GoFundMe, all of those websites, donations. Hey, Christine, I like what you're doing. Here's $10. Okay, Bill, here's a T-shirt. That's a donations type of transaction.
Is that allowed?
That is allowed globally, anywhere, without donations.
Without any restrictions?
Without any restrictions.
Oh, that's great news.
Now, what is not allowed without any restrictions is the following transaction. Hey, Christine, I like what you're doing. Here's $100. Okay, Bill, here's a share of stock in my company. That is equity crowdfunding, and there are restrictions on that type of crowdfunding. Now, you mentioned being in the state of Maryland. You can crowdfund up to $100,000 in equity in the state of Maryland. So if you start a new company or a new product, a new service, a daycare center, hair care salon, a tech company,
up to a certain amount.
You can raise up to $100,000 in the state of
Maryland.
In Maryland.
In D.C., it's different, though.
D.C. is different. D.C. has proposed rules and regulations that would allow you to raise up to $2 million.
Right.
Up to $2 million. For most startups, the limit is going to be about $500,000 because the limits are based on the audited financial statement. So if you have 3 years worth of audited financial statements, and you can raise up to $2 million. If you're just starting out and you don't have financial statements, then you can only raise $500,000 in D.C. Now, the company has to be based in D.C. It has to be registered in D.C. All of the investors have to be in D.C. also.
Oh, all the investors have to.
Same thing in Maryland. In the Maryland case, raising $100,000 for a Maryland-based startup, the company has to be registered in the state of Maryland. All of the investors have to be in the state of Maryland. And most of the business activity has to be in the state of Maryland also.
Are there about 11 to 12 right now states that allow for equity?
17.
17.
17 including the district. And what's going on here is that states have recognized that their small businesses need capital and need help. And they've said, listen, we're not, the Jobs Act, which is the subject of the book that I wrote, allows equity crowdfunding nationwide. But the Securities and Exchange Commission has been slow to roll out those regulations. So states have said, hey, we're not going to wait on the SEC. Chris, if you want to open a company in the state of Maryland and you need to raise $75,000, we're going to let you do it.
Wow.
By selling ownership. Equity is ownership stakes in a company. We're going to let you do it by selling ownership stakes in your new company to Maryland residents. As long as your company is in Maryland, they're in Maryland, all the revenues are in Maryland. It's a potent community development economic tool.
It's a huge tool.
Huge tool.
And we've talked about this, and we've had conversations, and of course, the impact on women and minorities could be tremendous.
Well, because those are some of the people that have been shut out of the capital markets.
For traditional money.
For traditional
funding,
sources, venture capital, bank loans, that sort of thing. So this is a way that you can get the funding for your great idea. The issue is this. The ideas in those sectors are no less quality than anywhere else. We're seeing amazing innovation and creativity across the board from everybody. You know, women, men, black, white, you know, Hispanic, Asian, everybody has good ideas. What's different now is that you can put some thought around those good ideas, structure a company around those good ideas, and actually get the money to make that idea come to life.
Oh, that's true. It's phenomenal. So have you seen the last, let's say, 5 years, a huge shift?
Yes.
To the public domain where people are really now starting to understand it?
I think so.
Because people have not, they still don't understand it.
Yes, there's still a lot of confusion, especially around that donations versus equity dimension, but also with respect to crowdfunding as a whole. People see things like the Pebble Watch, which was a watch that connects to your phone. They raised $10.2 million. They see something called the Coolest Cooler. They raised about $13 million, almost $14 million for a cooler that's connected to Bluetooth, that has a blender and a light. I mean, it sounds silly, but $14 million doesn't lie. It met a consumer need.
No, let's go back. It's a cooler.
It's a cooler that has a light and a blender attached to the top of the cooler. It's on rollers. You know, it does all of these. It's like the Swiss Army knife of coolers.
Right. I love it.
And nobody had thought of it before until this gentleman.
And where did that come from? Who was the gentleman?
You know, I don't recall his name, but if you Google coolest coolers, you know, it'll pop right up. This was a gentleman who came up with the idea. Now, the important thing.
Was he an engineer?
He has an engineering type of background. And he had tried 2 other times to raise crowdfunding money for this idea. So that's an important point to note. This was not his first time out of the box. He launched some crowdfunding campaigns that did not work as advertised. He learned from that experience. He said, okay, I need to show the product. I need to show the product in action. I need to have good color pictures. I need to have a bunch of videos. So he learned, and the next thing you know,
that's great. Wow.
He was able to generate a lot of capital to see his product really come to life. So we're seeing this creativity across the board. We're seeing people with great ideas who are getting the little amount of money they need, $10,000, you know, $20,000, $50,000.
That's great.
To bring these ideas to life.
And when we come back, we're going to take a short break. We're going to talk about Kugler cyclists.
Excellent.
Because that's
one of my favorites.
One of your favorites, I know. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back.
Thank you, Christine.
You're watching The Next Word. We will take a short break and we'll be right back.
Everybody has a dream. Mine was to see the ocean. And with a little help, I made it.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Chris Warnke, and tonight we're having a conversation with William Michael Cunningham, Managing Partner of National Crowdfunding Services, to talk about the power of crowdfunding. And what a powerful tool it is.
It is. Firstly, thank you again for
it's great to have you. I mean, this is fascinating. We're going to have to keep having you come back to talk about this, because I know people who are watching are going to be fascinated with what you have to say.
Well, I hope so. A lot of need out there, a lot of great ideas, a lot of creativity.
Right.
So
and people that are not as informed about it. Right. It's just starting. Let's say, as we said, the last maybe 4, 5 years.
Yes. Yes.
And it's now hitting a wonderful level of.
Really have reached that tipping point where people are aware of the tool, they've seen it work. Even if it hasn't worked for them, it's worked for somebody that they know, and they say, well, hey, I'm going to check this out. Either that, or they've seen a product or a service that they want to buy. There's a guy in my office who'll go unnamed, but he's purchased 20 or 30 crowd-funded products. He just loves it. He just loves the creativity that's represented in some of these products. And $20, $30, $100, you know, this is a new hobby. It's a new hobby for him.
So speaking of products, I read in your article in the Washington Post on August 17th of this year, great, that was, by the way, it was a great article.
Thank you very much.
About Kugler cyclists
Kugler
in Washington, D.C.
Yes, ma'am.
They are out there now in the crowdfunding space. And you just have to make a donation.
Right. Yeah, Eric Kugler runs DC Bike Space, which is on 7th Street, right across from the convention center.
Right.
Now, he wants to manufacture bicycles in Washington, D.C.
What a great idea.
It's a great idea. Apparently, and I didn't know this, 85% of bicycles are made overseas, and parts are imported here, that sort of thing. His idea is, hey, we can actually make a high-quality bicycle in Washington, D.C., given the bike culture that we have, given the number of bicyclists that we have, given the resources that we have. Why don't we make a bike here in Washington, D.C.?
That's a great idea.
Yeah. Great idea. He launched a crowdfunding campaign to do so. Now, his crowdfunding campaign, the first phase is over. And I think he raised about $3,000. He was trying to raise $30,000 just to get started with that process. But he's going to come back at it. I talked to him last week. Just as with the Coolest Cooler guy, part of his goal was to learn about crowdfunding, learn about how to run a crowdfunding campaign, how to put up a video, how to do the pictures, how to write the text, and then come back at it.
That's great.
So he's going to continue down this path of trying to raise money from the community to actually open a bicycle manufacturing facility in Washington, D.C. If he can do that, you can do anything. I mean, it's just great.
Right. And that comes back to your book, The Jobs Act, because it truly is about jobs.
It is about jobs. It is about jobs.
What prompted you to write the book?
Well, I've been long looking for ways that we could improve economic activity, especially in underserved communities, minority, women communities, that sort of thing. Knowing that the creativity was there, that the passion was there, that the ideas were there. The only thing that wasn't there was the money.
Right.
So
which is a big issue.
Which is a big issue. I was trying to figure out some way that we could solve that gap. So back in 2005, 2006, I actually invented something called the microcredit stock exchange, which was an early precursor to crowdfunding. Kind of continued to work and develop that product. Crowdfunding started to grow up around it, and it's developed to the point where it is right now. So I basically continued that work and have really looked to use this as a tool to get capital into underserved communities in a new way that energizes productivity, gives people hope, gives people jobs, and does so in a way that supports the overall economy.
That's great. And we're so happy to have you in Washington, D.C. and the surrounding area.
Thank you. Delighted to be here. Again, born and raised. Happy to be here.
And I know you've been on a number of shows, including NBC and other, MSNBC, and to talk about this. And that's what it takes. It takes people like yourself to be talking about it, because once people know what they can do,
you can do with it.
It's hard.
Well, it also takes people like yourself to invite me on to talk about it, who have the interest and also understand how great a tool this can be.
It's an amazing tool. We were just having this conversation just 20 minutes ago with someone who was just saying it's very hard to raise money for issues like providing better treatment for mental health for our veterans.
Yes.
I mean, issues that a lot of us take for granted, but.
Well, and we'll be working on a veterans campaign soon.
You will.
Well,
I have an issue for you in Ward 7.
Okay, very good, very good. I mean, and this is exactly what I mean that we are seeing. We're seeing people who are passionate about products. One of the most active crowdfunding areas is computer gaming. As a matter of fact, the largest, the most successful crowdfunding.
Talk to my son. Talk to my 19-year-old
he's
son.
part of that generation.
Right.
He's part of that group. The most successful crowdfunding campaign to date has been for Star Citizen, which is a game. It's a computer game. They've raised $55 million online for this computer game.
Let me get that one again. What is it called?
It's called Star.
We have to look this up.
I'm going to have to look into this. Star Citizen.
Wow.
Star Citizen. $55 million.
And it's a game.
It's a game. It's a computer
that they're going to launch.
Well, they've already launched it.
it.
And what this does is, what the crowdfunding aspects, which are brilliant, by the way, do, if you donate a certain dollar amount, $100, then you get a special type of armor within the computer game. Or if you donate $100 at another point in time, you get a special spaceship, which nobody else has, nobody except for the the 2,000 people who also donated,
Right,
the
right,
$100.
right.
But that's enough to energize
The base.
the base.
Wow, that's
And the
amazing.
people who are passionate about Star Citizen say, hey, yeah, I want that armor, and I'll donate $50, sure,
Right.
in order to get that code so that I can have that armor. It's brilliant. It's a brilliant, and it shows $55 million. It shows what can be done with this tool if you use it correctly, if you have the base. And computer gamers are, as you all know, because
Right.
of your son, they are excited about this sort of
Oh,
thing.
absolutely.
I mean, and they will go out of their way to make a crowdfunding donation to a gaming crowdfunding campaign, as shown not only by Star Citizen, but there have been a number of other computer game
Really,
crowdfunding campaigns that have raised over $5 million. I mean, it's just amazing. It's one of the most successful sectors in crowdfunding.
Because people will say, well, how much did you really raise?
Right,
I mean,
right.
But that truly is one of the very successful.
Yes.
But for people to be part of a crowd, there's an emotional attachment
There is.
also, right?
There is.
And so there's a strong element there,
There
that
is.
that you're playing to.
And the best crowdfunding...
Am I right?
No,
Because there have been
you're absolutely right.
many sociological studies on this.
Yes.
As being part of a crowd, whether you're in a public place and someone gets sick, then you start feeling sick.
Right.
But in this instance, being part of a movement
Part
in
of
a way.
movement. To create
Very emotionally
something
powerful.
and where they're tying to the idea of creating something, a product or a project that would not exist without your participation.
Right.
So
right.
that's really one of the strongest emotional ties. And the best crowdfunding campaigns know how to energize that. Let me give an example. There was a crowdfunding campaign for a movie called Veronica Mars, the Veronica Mars movie.
Mm-hmm.
They raised about, Jing, do you remember how much they raised? I have my assistant Jing over there who's
Yes.
not on camera because she's shy, but let's say they raised about, I want to say $4 million
Right.
for that movie. One of the rewards that they offered was a walk-on role in the movie itself. Very powerful. If you're a fan of that movie, if you're a fan of that genre, that will speak to you. Hey, I can actually have a chance to actually be in the movie. Now, it was $10,000. It was a very high-priced
threshold.
reward. But imagine if they had done that with Star Wars. I know I would have paid
You would have
money
paid.
to.
I've been out to Star Wars convention.
Yeah,
How
Star Trek.
passionate those people are.
I'm a big Trekkie too. That
Yeah.
gets back to the
Yes,
community
yeah.
aspect. So all of a sudden they're offering you a ticket
Right.
to play a different role within the community. That's one of the reasons why crowdfunding works so well.
No, it's huge. I mean, absolutely. Now, does Virginia have anything on the books in terms
They
of
do not yet, but they are reviewing it. I
Okay.
understand. I would not be surprised if Virginia does allow equity crowdfunding
Equity crowd.
very, very soon, especially because Maryland and D.C. have done so. What we're seeing is that on the equity crowdfunding front, contiguous states are competing against each other. So if Maryland allows it,
Interesting.
and D.C. allows it, then Virginia knows, hey, there's certain tiny companies that might move into
because you have to
those-
have there's a requirement to actually reside.
Yes, to actually be
That's
in those
actually
states.
very appealing.
It's very
from a tax perspective,
Yep.
from revenue generated, from jobs created,
very smart.
from
It's very smart
very
economic
smart
development.
economic development.
And also supports the creative economy, the innovation economy of the
Right.
jurisdiction that you're in. Because most of the companies are going to be doing, not all of them. I mean,
Yes.
not everything is going to be a Pebble Watch or a Coolest Cooler or a Veronica Mars movie campaign.
Right.
You're going to see a lot of people crowdfunding franchises in underserved communities. Let's say you wanted to put a Starbucks up in a community that did not have one. There might be a way to crowdfund with the neighborhood people a franchise in that location. Let's say you didn't have any healthy food choices in your community, and you could go to Subway and get somebody to actually purchase a Subway franchise, put it in that community, and then crowdfund the equity, ownership, participation of people in that community. Guess where those people are going to go?
Right.
To get a sandwich if they own $100, as little as $100. We're not talking huge
Right,
dollar amounts
right.
here. $100 in the local Subway. Well, I'm going to Subway. Not only that, when I see the
jobs.
lights on and when I see trash out front,
Right.
I'm going to call somebody, and I'm going to complain. Hey, you're spending my. I know it's only $100, but it is my $100, and
Right.
you're wasting my $100 because the lights
So it gives
are
you
on.
ownership.
It gives you ownership in the end.
In the community
Right, in the community.
and society and the well-being of your fellow man and woman,
That's right.
right?
That's right.
And what a great thing. Now, you didn't start this way. I mean, I know this was, you're trained as an economist.
Right.
Right? Where'd you go to school?
University of Chicago. Went to Howard
Oh, that's a
University
great school.
undergraduate.
Yeah, yeah.
And University of Chicago for
Love University of
graduate,
Chicago.
Economics, yes.
And Howard.
Yeah.
One of our great institutions. And speaking of institutions, of course, universities have started to really look at this. Not all,
Yes.
but there's some. Berkeley,
Yes.
University of Washington,
Right.
University of Missouri,
Arizona State.
Arizona
There
State.
are about
I mean,
30 major universities that have launched crowdfunding websites and platforms of their own.
now, why have they stopped it? Why have, I mean, like 100 or 500 or...
The word, as you
The word
correctly
hasn't
point
gotten out yet.
The word is
Yeah.
getting out,
Right.
and then you have some institutions that are just slow to adopt. They want to see what happens over here
Right.
before they actually adopt the technology. But I think it's coming. We're in conversation with two universities in the Washington, D.C. area who will go unnamed because I don't have permission to say them.
Okay.
About
Can I guess?
crowdfunding, about launching
Right.
crowdfunding
Well, they have
campaigns.
to. I mean,
Yeah.
and I know at the conference we had a couple of weeks ago that, of course, my own alma mater, University of Maryland,
Yes.
I'm sure they're looking at it, but, universities need to be looking at this.
Yes. And one of the reasons is they have an alumni network that
Huge
is-
alumni
that
network.
they
I can
can
attest to that.
use as part of the crowd.
Right.
Hey, we've got somebody who has this new idea at the University of Maryland. Check it out now. It may or may not, we're not guaranteeing
Right, right.
that it's going to work, but we can guarantee that this person actually is a student at the University of Maryland, and that they have invented this thing. And you might want to look at donating $10, making an equity investment of $100 in this woman's company, just in case this thing takes off. As one of my
Wow.
partners, Henry Berger, is fond of saying, you've got $100 mistakes in your wardrobe, in your closet. I know I do. I've got shoes that are.
How'd you know about
So.
Yes, we do. We do
So
have a lot of $100.
this is what you're going to see, and for a very minimal entry point, you'll be able to invest in what might be, the next big thing. And again,
Yes,
that's not the typical case, but it could happen. I mean,
Right.
in a very real sense.
Now, on the last note, there is a crowdfunding professional association, which
Yes.
I know you're a member of. And if anybody wants information, can we give a few websites or a few?
Absolutely. I like Crowdfunding Professional Association. You
Right.
can Google that and look that up. You can come to our website, nationalcrowdfundingservices.com.
Okay.
You can also www.
Right.
You can also look at our blog, crowdfundingnow.blogspot.com.
Great.
That's another good one. Certainly looking at the websites themselves. Kickstarter is known
Yes.
for having statistics. At the bottom of the page, you go to kickstarter.com, look at the bottom of the
Okay.
page, they have a tag there called stats, and you click on that, and it gives very good statistics of the breakout of crowdfunding activity across certain sectors. So arts, games, dance, movies,
Oh, that's great.
that sort of thing.
The Kickstarter is great. And
Good
Indigo
way.
and
Indiegogo, not so much. They're not as big on the stat
Okay.
side, but you can certainly look on the platforms
Great.
to see what's going on. One of the websites that I want to give a shout out to is something called Patreon, Patreon.com.
Okay.
This is a crowdfunding platform for artists. So if you're an artist, Chris, and you want to get a group of patrons together to finance the development of a
That's
certain
great.
piece of art,
Wow, what's
you can launch a campaign to do
or a grant or a
comic book
comic book.
a
Yeah, you're right. Or a
movie,
movie. Or
anything.
That's great.
I mean, it's just
this is
it's really
wonderful.
impressive.
I mean, this is so informative.
It's really
Bill, I can't tell you. Thank you. This has been great.
well. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really been terrific, and I know everybody who's going to be watching will enjoy it thoroughly and learn a lot.
Well, I hope so.
Am I going to bring you back?
I hope
Thank
so.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
Chris.
you. You've been watching The Next Word. Hope you've enjoyed it. You can watch us on Tuesdays at 9 and Wednesdays at 6. Have a great evening. Good night.